So as you go through this thing, you're going to find that this business, you're going to find that there are times when people just can't make a good decision. So as a real estate professional, do you think it would be a good idea to actually be able to give them a factual response and a way to help them think through the process instead of just saying, well, okay, I'm just going to wait. So for example, my sister-in-law yesterday, 2 days ago, she showed a buyer a condo. Buyer's a young man. He's living with his parents, and the parents would like him to have his own place. So they're helping him get his own place. That's all the story I know. I can imagine and envision some funny stuff in the background with that. And he's kind of like, well, you know, I'm not really, you know, I'm not in a super hurry. I'm really not that, you know, I'm really not that jumping up and down about going now. So, you know, I think I'm just going to save money for a couple more months, and then, you know, I'll let you know when I'm ready. And my question to my sister-in-law was, okay, well, so what did you say back to him? And her response to me was, I didn't really say a whole lot of anything. I was hoping I could talk to you. You could tell me what to say to him. Okay? So there's a lot of times as a real estate professional, we've got renters or we've got buyers that for whatever reason haven't made the decision to actually move forward and be really motivated to move forward. So how do you help them increase their motivation without putting them in a headlock or twisting their arm behind their back and just kicking them down the road? Well, I had found a couple years ago, 15 years ago, I had the same exact issue with some buyers. So I started showing them what the math looked like. And when I started showing them the math on what it looked like when they were waiting, it started to make them a lot more motivated, right? So one of the things right out of the gate that you can use that's super, super simple and super, super extremely effective, particularly if the person is renting, is to just simply say, well, based on what you're doing right now, you're throwing away exactly 100% of every dollar that you put in towards rent. Do you want to keep doing that for the rest of your life, or would you like to keep doing that for the next year? So ask them what their rent is. Rent is $1,500. Okay, so last year, you gave $18,000 to somebody else to pay their mortgage for them. How many more times do you want to keep doing that? A lot of times when you have that conversation with a renter, that simple verbiage right out of the gate by asking what their rent is and doing the calculation can really help you kick them off the fence and help them make sense of what they're doing. If that doesn't work, then there's a really good chance there's no point in going any further with it, right? Because they're just not ready to go. So part of what we have to do is figure out what people's motivation is. If you show them that real quick and they say, no, you know, I'm still good, let them go, right? They're not that motivated. Put them on drip campaigns and work them long term. That's probably the best thing you can do at this point. Okay? The second thing is you've got a buyer, and a buyer says, well, I'm thinking about waiting, or I'm just going to wait till next year, or I'm going to take time and save some money for the next, going to save some money for the next 6 months, or I'll save money for the next year. That's where you have an opportunity to help show them what the math looks like of what they're doing. Now, of course, the cool part is if they're a buyer and they're renting, it makes it really easy because you start off with that. So this is like strategy number one right out of the gate, is just say, well, if you're renting, boom, 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 are you sure you want to do that for another year? Because now you said you were trying to save money for your house for next year, and you threw away $18,000. It makes it really hard to afford a house when you're giving away $18,000 a year. So instead of doing that, would you like to invest that in a house? Sometimes that kicks them off the fence, right? But here's the reality. A lot of you guys already do that. You know, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? But I want to make sure I touch base on it, because a lot of times people don't do that. Real estate agents don't do that. They just say, well, now's a really good time to buy. Based on what, right? Based on what? So if you start to give them factual information, it will help you out a bunch, okay? So strategy number one is to talk to the renter, talk to the buyer, say, here's what you're pushing out. What are you paying every month? This is what it costs you per year. That money, you're giving away 100% of it. And I guarantee you over the next year, you're giving away 100% of that too. So at the end of your rent, they don't say, hey, by the way, here's some of the money back that you gave me because I didn't need all of it. Or by the way, the house went up that you're living in. The price of the house went up that you're living in. So I'm going to give you the difference. Have you ever seen anybody do that yet? Of course not, right? So this is 100% guaranteed you're throwing that away. If you're cool with that, then keep doing what you're doing. What typically will happen is you're going to find that there's other things behind the scenes, and there's other things behind what they're doing, and other things behind the system that they're in that are going to make them actually slow that down. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure, as we're going through this process, we're not convincing people to do things that they don't want to do, right? We're not here to convince people to do something that they don't want to do. We're also not here to convince somebody to do something that they shouldn't do, right? So with that being said, you want to educate them and show them why they should be doing this and why they should be thinking through this. One of the things I say consistently when I'm talking to buyers and renters that are doing this process, Anthony, you can mute your phone there, brother. Anthony over there banging around. I'm trying to mute you here, bro. There, I just muted you, Anthony. Nice racket you're making there, bro. All right. So as you're going through this process, working with the buyers and sellers, you're not going to convince them to do anything. You want to show them facts and show them information. And if that doesn't unlock their natural motivation, then you let it go, right? Because we're not going to be twisting people's arms. We're not punching people. We're not kicking people. We're not dragging people through the system. All right? So if you have any questions as we're going through here, unmute your phone or unmute your system, ask the question, and jump on in, okay? So don't hesitate to interrupt. I just don't like background noise. So if you have a question as you're going through, you want to go through something again, you have a question about that particular verbiage, you want to back up and do it again, just let me know, okay? This is interactive. It's supposed to be interactive. I just try to mute people when they're making background noise, okay? So there's process number one. Show them what they're blowing every month. Now, if they're living at home with mom and dad, they're not spending any money. They're not spending any money on rent. And sometimes they'd rather stay home where mom is filling the fridge every day or every week, and mom's doing laundry and taking care of cleaning and making their bed. You know, these are 25-year-old dudes staying at home because mom's hooking them up, right? So sometimes you're going to have that issue. You might not be able to convince them to get off the fence. So here's strategy number two. Strategy number two is to show them what the market's been doing just on appreciation. So strategy number two is going to be appreciation. And we want to keep this reasonably simple. And the reason we want to keep this reasonably simple is because you guys have to understand, you got to pay attention to this. They don't know what you know. So when we start talking about all these crazy long-winded explanations and high-level explanations, it makes it really, really confusing. If you are talking to somebody and they're confused, they're less likely to make a good decision. They're way less likely to be able to feel more motivated. They're just going to feel more confused. More confused people feel less motivated typically, right? So what I want to make sure we do is we want to keep this solution simple. We want to keep these answers really simple first, and then if they still want more information, then you can add to it. So first things first is system number one. It's like if you're paying rent, how much money you paying rent? Great. You know, that's $18,000 a year, and you're saying you're throwing away $18,000 every single year right now, guaranteed with zero return. Kind of tough to get ahead when you're doing that. Somebody have a question? No? Okay, cool. So second section is really actually super, super simple. And a lot of times this by itself helps kick them off the fence. So let's get I want to get specific with a couple of markets here. When you're talking about appreciation, you want to say, okay, well, what type of home price are they looking for, right? So on the appreciation game, let's say just, real simple here, $200,000 house. $200,000 house would be just below average sales price in Detroit, where I'm standing right now. It's actually a little bit below sales price in Tampa, where I have my other place. Orlando is higher than that, right, Dale? You can nod your head. Orlando's quite a bit higher than that. Yes. Because Orlando prices have been spiking and jumping through the roof, right? Yes. Dawn, how much? What's the average sales price in Lakeland right now? Average sales price in Lakeland's probably in that 200s, a little over 200 range. So we'll use that as a good reference point. If you want to use 300, that's fine. So you'll have to run the math on 300. So do you know what the appreciation has been in your market over the last year? That's question number one, right? So Dale, what is the appreciation in the Orlando market over the last year? Do you know?
Around 7%.
Around 7%. Okay, cool. If you don't know that information, what your market has gone up, you guys should be keeping your eyeballs open for my market update. I will be doing a market update in the next week or so. The information from last month didn't come out until just now, which is just flipping ridiculous. It's taken forever for the info to come out this month and the systems that I grab it from. So Orlando market went up 7% in the last year. Okay, so here's the scenario. I know what house prices are looking for. I know what the appreciation was in my market, in my immediate market, and I use this information real simple. Okay, you guys can probably see where this is going. This is a nice, easy one. But most realtors don't respond with this when they say, well, I'm thinking about waiting. Okay, you're thinking about waiting. Well, let me show you what has happened over the last year. So the verbiage on this is really important. The verbiage is really important on this. Let me show you what happened over the last year. And then if you still want to wait another year, I'm totally cool with it, right? I mean, obviously I want to sell you a house, but I want you to make a great decision first. So let me show you what happened over the last year, and then tell me if you still feel the same way, okay? In the Orlando market, so for Dale, the verbiage is in the Orlando market in the last year, your average sales price in this market went up 7%. So for a $200,000 house, went up $14,000 in the last year. Okay, so based on that, are you sure you want to wait another year? Simple question, right? And then you shut up. Let them talk next. Right? See what they have to say. If they say, yeah, but I got to save money. Okay, great. You got to save money. So let me ask you this. Are you saving a little over $1,200 per month right now towards buying your next house, towards buying a house? Is that a good question? Yeah, right? Because they're saying, well, I'm saving money, but they're not doing the math, and you've got to break it down so it makes it really simple. So if you take this $14,000 divided by 12, you're looking at $1,200 per month, right? So if you say, well, how much money are you saving per month for your house? Well, I'm saving like $400 or $500 a month. Okay, so based on that, you're losing $700 a month every month while you're waiting to buy your next house. Are you good with that? No. And you just shut up and let them talk, right? Because this process right here, they probably are not doing the math. They probably haven't done the math. They don't know that the average house went up $14,000 in the last year in the Orlando market, Dale. So when you tell them that, they go, bing, but then you've got to tell them what does that mean to them. Right, so here's the difference between giving people info and helping make people connect things in their head. When you actually tell them the info, then you got to tell them what that means to them. So what that means to you is if you're not saving $1,200 a month, this house is becoming less affordable for you in the next year. So while you're saving money for a house because you want it to be more affordable, you're actually making it less affordable by waiting. Does that make sense? Always ask that question. Does that make sense? And then shut up, wait for the response. Because they're going to probably look at you and be like, oh, crap, I didn't think of it like that, right? I had this conversation yesterday with somebody, and they looked at me and they're like, oh, geez, I didn't know that. I mean, on their deal, it was only 10 grand that the property went up, $10,000. But I said, well, how much money are you saving? I said, well, I'm saving $300 a month right now. I said, okay, so based on that, you're losing about $700 a month right now. And they're like, why? I ran the math for them, and I showed them. You notice the first thing I do with you guys, I start to draw it out and I show them. Based on the house price you're looking at, what the appreciation was last year, here's how much money that house went up in the last year, right? And this is how much per month you'd have to be saving to have that house even buying it this year versus next year for you.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
I know I changed the dynamics a little bit, but I currently have somebody that would love to get out of their house, and the market is not doing too bad in their area, but they are over mortgaged. So what is your advice at something like that, to where they would probably even have to owe more than what they would make, but with the market being where it is and them desperate to want to leave, how would you handle that?
Okay, so you've got that's a completely different scenario. So let's put this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a parking lot. You guys know.
Okay. Sorry, Russ. It's something I'm currently dealing with, so you literally just hit this right on the nose.
So here's the cool part. These trainings become way more valuable when we talk about real stuff, and you can take this stuff back and then walk somebody through this information. So like literally on Monday night, my sister-in-law sitting right here, and I went through all of this information with her, breaking it down for her buyer. And her buyer decided he wanted to go look at a condo yesterday. So,
Awesome.
I mean, when, it's like, if you can take this stuff and apply it, it's way more powerful, right? So, Brandy, what you're talking about is the house that they currently have, they owe more money for it than it's worth?
Then what I feel like the comps would even pull it up with. I don't feel as if they would get what they're, because they have 2 mortgages, just to give a background, because obviously nobody knows who it is. So they owe more than what I believe that it would actually appraise for and sell for.
Okay, so real simple. So you've got upside down seller. Okay, so that's what we call an upside down seller.
Yes.
So the fun part, Brandy, I learned to build my real estate business in 2005 in Tampa, Florida. I moved from Detroit because the market here was getting destroyed, and then I got to learn how to build my business in a market getting destroyed and knowing no people, which was quite a fun way to learn how to do business. And pretty much every single seller that I sat with in a listing appointment, they were upside down, which means they owed more money for their house than it was worth. I would sit down with them and say, your house is worth $200,000. And they're like, oh crap. Like, what's your mortgage right now? And they're like, my mortgage is $280. I'm going, oh crap.
Mm-hmm.
So I always knew going in what their mortgage was. So I always knew where this conversation was going. I was prepared for it because you always ask that before you go into a listing appointment. So what do you think you owe on the house? And then the second question is, do you have anything else that's tied to the house that you owe? Home equity lines, credit lines, any other things you owe money on long term? Did you do a county program where they did the roof for you and you got to pay them back? So people forget about the other stuff. And then
Right.
you got to figure out whether they can actually get out with money in their pocket or not. So actually, funny part is, Brandy, you haven't been in the business long enough to know that's actually kind of unusual right now. But I would say 7 years ago, very common. 8, 9, 10 years ago, super common.
Right.
We'll talk about how to handle that. So the other part of the scenario that we'll do too is we'll say second part is a move up buyer. And a move up buyer would be simple as to find that. Move up buyer, somebody says, hey, I'm in the $200,000 house range right now. I'm doing better financially. My husband got a raise. We got a second job. So we want to move up and buy a $300,000 house. If they're doing that, I can show you the math on that too. Okay? So say there might be, to help them solve this, it might be actually good to have that conversation about them as a move up. So if they're going to buy something a little bigger and more expensive, which wouldn't shock me at all, if they're going to do that, then that might be a good scenario to be able to walk them through the math on that. So I'll show you how to walk through the math on that. Sound good?
I have a question too when you have a chance.
Sure, go ahead.
My question is, when you're telling them they can save, and rent and all that, the first example, what
Yep.
if their response is that they just don't have enough for a down payment?
Okay, so that's a great question. So what I would be saying is, okay, so you don't have enough money for a down payment, you're saving for a down payment. The problem is you're not saving as much money as the house price is going up. So what's happening over the next year while you're saving for the down payment is that this house is actually becoming less and less affordable. So the question I would be asking you is, if there was a way you could find the ability to get a down payment, explain this to your mom and dad, or let me help you explain it to your mom and dad. Let me explain it to grandma. Is there anybody in your life that could help you with that to be able to get you on that path to being able to catch up and or get the thing now, right? So what you'll find is a lot of times people are like, well, I'm trying to do it on my own. And if you sit down with them and their family and say, okay, so little Timmy here wants to buy a house, and we're talking about what's going on, and he's paying right now X amount of dollars per month for rent, it's 18 grand. So it's really hard for him to save an extra money. So here's what the problem is. The problem is with the appreciation that's been going on in the Tampa market, the Orlando market, Detroit market. By the way, Detroit market is 7% in the last year, 7% the year before that, and a little over 7% the year before that. So over the last 3 years, it's 22%. So what's happening is Timmy wants to buy a house, and the issue is that he doesn't have the down payment money. So if he was able to get the down payment money, and or somebody was gifting him the down payment money, it could get him into a house sooner, and then he'd have some appreciation immediately versus waiting. So what you'll find is that when people swallow their pride and ask their family for help, a lot of times when the family knows the facts, this same information can help them understand, wow, we really should step up and help Timmy get a house because this is a big deal. And every year this goes by makes it harder and harder and harder for him to actually get a house. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So a little bit helpful. It's funny because you're going to say, well, Russ, pretty much every time I throw up a question, you give me the same answer. Yeah, I give you the same answer, and we just adjust it for the party that we're looking at, right? So there's not always a solution. Not everybody has somebody in their life. Like for us, I mean, I sold my 1987 black Mustang with T-tops 5.0 for the down payment on my first house. And then I was driving a 1989 piece of crap tan Ford Pro that I hated. Thankfully, I got T-boned in it, and the car got totaled, and I had to get a different car. Right? Good for me, right? So sometimes you got to do crazy stuff. But and again, as you walk through this information, Heidi, the cool part is that sometimes it's going to click things in their head and say, "Oh, geez, let's find a way." Or you know what? Maybe I should have this conversation with my parents. Maybe I should have this conversation with grandma. Maybe I should let people know, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to save money for the house, and let them know. So the people that want to help, sometimes there are people in your life that want to help, and they just don't know until they know you need help. If that's not the case, again, you walk through this, they've got all the info. If they still can't do it, they still can't do it. But at least they know the facts. Are they going to work a little bit harder, maybe spend a little bit less and save a little bit faster, knowing this is going on in the background? Yeah. I mean, they should. Are they going to say, maybe I shouldn't get that latte at Starbucks or Tim Hortons every day? You know, I can save a couple more, you know, that adds up over a year because I need to do this faster. So it's maybe not kick them off the fence, they do something today, but it certainly gives them the facts and information to have their brain thinking, I should really be serious about making this happen sooner than later. And even if they buy something in 6 months versus a year, is that good?
Yes.
Yeah, you've done them a favor, right? So an expert is going to help you take the information we know and assimilate it into their life so that they understand what they should be doing. Not what I want them to do, it's what they should be doing. Okay, so I've said this a bunch recently. So do you know why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Have you heard that phrase before? People say that all the time, right? That happens because the rich people know this, or somebody's telling them this stuff, right? So here's what I'm doing. I'm just educating you. You can do whatever you want with the info, but a rich person knows this. Nobody told me this when I was younger. And most of the time when I tell people, has anybody told you this is what's going on and what this means? We know house prices are going up, but what does it really mean? See, so a lot of real estate agents say, house prices are going up, you should buy now. Well, yeah, house prices are going up, you should buy now, and let me tell you why. See, an expert's going to say, you need to have your hips replaced, Russ, which I happen to be twice in the last 3 years. You need to have your hips replaced, and let me explain to you why. You've got this and this and this and this and this, and what's likely to happen is boom, boom, and boom. So based on that info, what do you think? And I'm like, let's do this, right? Made sense. They didn't just go, you need to have it done. And I'm like, well, why? So if we answer that why, and they have a higher level of understanding, and you keep it simple, they're going to probably make a better decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So that's so first off, we'll start over. I'm going to repeat a lot of this because I want to really dig in. Okay. First thing first, you just say, hey, you're a renter right now. How much are you paying for rent? Boom. Okay. You know, guaranteed you're throwing away $18,000 per year. Also, with that being said, do you know what's happened with house prices over the last year? So Dale would be in Orlando. You say your average $200,000 house went up 7%. So let's do the math on that. $200,000 house went up 7%. That's $14,000. So in addition to you're paying rent at $1,500 a month, because of appreciation of homes, you've also thrown away an additional $1,200 a month. So here's the deal. This is where it starts to get wacky, okay? So you want to give them the shortest answer to help them have that light bulb pop on. And then if they want more info, you go to the next step. And then you tied step 1 and 2 together. This is where it gets even more powerful. So not only did you throw away $1,500 a month there, you threw away $1,200 a month here. So based on that, you've thrown away what? $2,700 per month? So just in the last year, that's what you're throwing away on a monthly basis between rent and house appreciation. Right? I mean, you're talking big, that's a big number. That's a big number, and that's not even, this isn't, I mean, 7% solid. That's strong appreciation. It's not astronomical. This is what they're already doing. So you're taking what they're already doing and applying it to their life, and if that doesn't make them go, holy moly, if I'm serious about buying a house, I better get on this, it should accelerate their process. So if there was a way to get you qualified right now, do you want to try to get qualified? So like for some of these people, it's like, I'm thinking about it. Okay, great. Well, here's the math. Now are you more motivated? Yeah. So if you're thinking about getting qualified or you're thinking about doing this, let me introduce you to my guy. I'll have him give you a call. And if there's a way to do it now, let's figure out a way to do it now, which might include you asking your family for some help so you can get the down payment stuff. Or if you've got a little bit of money, we've got a couple of ways we can structure the loan where you can get seller concessions, where we buy the house for $205,000 and the seller gives you $5,000 towards your closing costs to help you get a little bit of that money to reduce the amount of money out of your pocket. Does it sound like something you want to talk about more seriously? And most of the time they're going to say, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that. Do you know most buyers don't know that they can get some sellers concessions in certain markets? If it's not a super highly competitive market, a lot of sellers will pay concessions. They don't even know what that means. It just simply means you have less money out of your pocket to get into a house. You might be surprised how little you actually need to get into a house. So let's at least know what the numbers are, and then you can build your business and you can save with that in mind, and that will help increase their motivation too. Because now that you're showing them a path to success, instead of, I don't know whether I can or can't do this, let's answer the question. So if you've got a buyer that's on the fence, let's answer the question. If you can do something, great. Then you just got to say, okay, you want to take advantage of that. If you can't do something, at least we then know exactly what you need to do to be able to get this done. So either way, it's going to be a benefit for you. Does that sound good?
Yes.
A lot of times they're going to say yes. Now you've educated them. I'm not twisting their arm saying you really need to buy a house, because then they think I'm just trying to get a house because I need a sale so I can pay my house payment. Because that's what most of the consumers think. We're just in it because we want to get paid. No, I'm in it because I want you to make good financial decisions. I'm not just a real estate guy. I'm a real estate expert and consultant, and my job as a consultant is to help you understand what's going on in the market so that you can make good decisions. My job is to help you make good decisions in this market. If you want to buy a house, I'll help you do that. If you look at this and say, I'm not ready to buy a house, I'm all for it. Whatever, this is your decision based on what you want to do. If you're cool with this, you're cool with throwing away this, you're cool with throwing away this, you're cool with that number total, keep doing what you're doing. Most people aren't, of course. It's not about me getting paid. It's about me helping you understand. And when you help people have higher levels of understanding, do they respect you more?
Yes.
Yeah. Now you're not just a salesperson, you're a consultant. Because when you start talking to them, they think you're a sales guy. When you start doing this, they start thinking you're an expert and a consultant. You're going to hear this all the time. Nobody's told me this information before. So your parents probably didn't even tell you this, because your parents might not realize this is what's going on. I mean, in the back of your mind, people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. We know houses are appreciating. And when you say this, they go, bing, light bulb pops on, and they go, oh, holy crap. I didn't realize that's what that meant. And then you break it down into something that makes sense to them on a month-by-month basis, and their light bulb really starts popping on. Motivation goes up. Okay?
Question.
Good. Yes, go ahead.
Is there a way to tie in, like the falling interest rates and whatnot that we have going on right now? Because that makes it a lot more affordable as well.
You know what? I'm not going into that, man. That's crazy. I don't want to take time on that stuff. I can't believe you asked that. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Oh, sorry. That's up next, dude. That's next. Right? Okay, so, yeah, absolutely. Right? So this is the simple process. Simple number one, simple number two. Now, if you get somebody as a detail person, or if you happen to see a mortgage person say, hey, interest rates have fallen, this is a great opportunity for you guys to actually do the math for them on what does it mean with the interest rates. So when you're talking to a buyer, say, okay, part of what I do as a real estate person is not just help you buy a house, but help you understand what's going on, help you understand some of the math. Have you heard a lot of information about interest rates? Ask questions, right? Good salespeople don't just talk, they ask questions. So ask the question. Have you heard about interest rates? Have you seen stuff on Facebook about interest rates falling, interest rates falling, interest rates falling? Do you know what that means? Then shut up, listen for the answer. If they know the answer, great. Chances are they know part of the answer, but they don't know what it means, right? And here's the part where we get to switch from just being the real estate guy, being a salesperson, to being the real estate guy that's the expert, real estate girl that's the expert, that's also a consultant helping them make good decisions. So, Eves, this is a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because it's the next part of the step, okay? So then you're looking at interest rates. Some of you might be like, well, Russ, that's pretty easy. Okay, great. So what do you tell them? Ask them the question. Have you seen what's been happening with interest rates in the real estate market? Because when you buy a house, if you're going to finance it, not buying it cash, you're going to need to get a mortgage. If you get a mortgage, then there's going to be an interest rate attached to that. So what's been happening is over the last 7-8 months, interest rates have actually dropped a little bit again, which is really unusual because most people are expecting them to continue to go up. So do you know what the interest rate is currently on a mortgage? Ask them the question. They might have an idea, they might have no clue. Or they might have been online searching around and they bumped into a bunch of clowns. They're like, we've got a 30-year interest rate, 30-year fixed mortgage at 3%. Excuse me, which we all know is BS, right? You guys know, and I know 3%. You're not getting a 3% 30-year fixed right now. Not without paying a crap ton of points up front, okay? So do you know what the interest rates are right now? Well, so here's the cool part. Interest rates right now are right around 4%. Pretty straightforward. Okay, do you know what interest rates are? Michael, did you have a question?
No.
Nope, okay, cool. Okay, so interest rates right now are right around 4% plus or minus. So do you know what's happened over the last year with interest rates? Interest rates have actually dropped a little bit. If you're looking at what we expect interest rates to do over the next year, so Eves, this is a great little history lesson here, right? In the 1980s, so give them a quick sketch, super simple. In the 80s, what was interest rates plus or minus in the 80s? They're like in the 10 to 15% range, right? Yeah, I mean, some crazy interest rates in the 80s. In the 90s, I know I had mortgages in the 8 to 10% range. Some of them down into the 7s. When they went down to 7s, it was like, oh my gosh, everybody should refi, right? In the 2000s, 6 to 8% was fairly normal. Okay, and then when you get into the 2010 range, interest rates went way down in the 3 to 4% range. So historically, over time, it's not unusual for interest rates to be well above 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. It's not unusual for mortgage interest rates. So what's happening right now is we're at 4. So here we are, 2019. We're at 4%. So let me ask you, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, where do you think interest rates are going? Up or down? Ask them, right? Here's a short history lesson. Where do you think they're going? Well, let's listen. I'm not a betting man. I'm like one of the few people that can go to Vegas. As crazy as I am sometimes, people think I'm a little bit on the nutty side. As crazy as I am, I'm the dude that goes to Vegas and I won't spend a dime. I don't gamble a dime. It's just not my thing, right? I mean, like I played blackjack once or twice because my buddies roped me into it. It's not my thing, okay? If I was a betting man, I would bet that over the last 30 plus years, it's been way higher. This number should be up. Wouldn't surprise me at all if in the next 2, 3, 4 years, based on what everything else is doing, that it goes back up into the normal range, goes back up into 6, 7, 8. Wouldn't be a surprise, and that would be probably consistent over history. That's a pretty good number. 6, 7, 8 is actually pretty decent interest rates. So with that being said, do you know what that does to a mortgage rate? So a lot of people say, okay, well, that's great, Russ. So houses are appreciating. What's going to happen with interest rates? Well, if you were to say, if I was to say a betting man, I would say it's probably going to go up. Let's just say it goes up 1%. Do you know what that means?
Housing market goes down.
You know what that means if it goes up 1%. So a lot of people say, well, the interest rates are probably going to go up. It wouldn't be unusual for it to go up 1% in the next year. Heck, even earlier last year it was at 4.75. It's dropped back down again. Or earlier this year it's 4.75. It's dropped back down a little bit, but it wouldn't be a shock at all to see this thing at 5% at the same time next year. So do you know what that means? Remember, again, salesperson, ask questions. Do you know what that means? Listen to what they have to say. It's going to help you understand what they understand and help you talk to their level of understanding. So let me do the math for you. Let me show you what this means to you on your $200,000 house. Now we're starting to get somewhere, right? I see Facebook post after Facebook post after Facebook post of mortgage people saying interest rates dropped. None of them are saying, well, let me tell you what that means, right? Not a single one of them is saying, let me tell you what that means. If they did, people would get way more motivated to do something, whether it be refi or go out and buy. It shows them what it does to them, right? So here's the deal. You guys want me to show you a couple bootleg simple things? Ready for this? Okay. How many of you on here have a mortgage calculator on your phone? Now, so here's my old school mortgage calculator. You ready for this, guys? You're gonna love this. This is my old school mortgage calculator. Literally, it's a mortgage calculator, and it's got how you can plug in the info, you can plug in the loan amount, the term, the interest rate, and then hit the button that says payment. It'll tell you what the payment is. Pretty cool, right? Okay, there's your old school one. By the way, every single one of you should have one of these in your phone. If you don't already have an app, for a mortgage calculator, I recommend really highly getting one of these because it's way more powerful when you're sitting with them and say, okay, you're looking for a $150,000 house. Let's do the math on that right now. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You go to your app store. Everybody knows where their app store is. If you don't already have one of these, go to your app store. There is one particular app that I really, really dig because there are a bunch of them. This one is free. And it's really, really, really straightforward. If anything you guys will ever know about me when you get to know me well is I like super simple, stupid, easy stuff. If it's complicated, I don't want to mess with it, right? Particularly not business-related stuff. So the calculator you want to use is this one right here. Okay, this is Carl. So see, I wrote it right here. I wrote it here earlier for you guys. This is Carl's, K-A-R-L-S. Carl's mortgage calculator. Okay, looks like this. Carl's mortgage calculator. Here's the cool part about Carl's mortgage calculator. You plug in the loan amount. You can plug in the percentage. So you see over here, I plugged in the percentage of what they're going to put down, or I can put 0 in there, and it'll automatically calculate what their down payment would be. So say, hey, if you're going to put 5% down, or you're going to do an FHA, it's 3.5%. You put 3.5, and it'll tell them how much money that is. And then it shows you the loan amount. And then, of course, you've got your interest rate, and then 30-year fixed, and then it shows you your principal and interest. Now, for the purposes of what we're doing here, this is super, super simple because it's all in one spot. And literally, I can sit here while I'm talking to somebody, sipping on a cup of coffee, and I can adjust this around based on that individual and say, let me show you, again, remember, Eves, let me show you, Eves, what it means if interest rates change. So right now you're at $200,000 for that house, and we're expecting it, if it just does what it did last year, it goes up 7%. Don't even get me started on what happened the 2 years before that. Because if you think 14K is bad, times that by 3. Now you lost $42,000 in the last 3 years. Do you know why the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer? Rich people know this stuff, and they're using these tools and doing this stuff, and they got an extra 42 grand in their pocket just by living in their house. Okay? So with that, then you add interest rates. I'm not a betting man. Let me show you what's gone on in the history. Both 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 2019, we're at about 4%. We're betting on it. It's probably going to go up. If it does, let me show you what that means, right? So I could plug in here. So you'll see my mortgage calculator. So this is for the gentleman we talked to on Monday. He wants to buy a $150,000 house. That's what he's qualified for, like 150 to 180. He's probably going to put 10% down because his family's going to give him a little money because mom and dad want to get him out of the house. And then shows him what the loan amount is. At a 4% interest rate, 30-year fixed, there's what the actual payment would be for the principal and interest. Okay? Here's the cool part. There's your first page, right? As we scroll down, you can add in an estimation for home insurance, and you can add an estimation in for taxes. Telling me my Zoom meeting's starting. Too late. Okay, so you've got your taxes and you've got your insurance built into there so you can give them a total payment. Now, I'm not saying I want you to do the job of a mortgage person. I'm just saying that if you're sitting talking with somebody and they're not that motivated, you show them this and this and they say, by the way, in addition to that, have you factored in interest rates? Let me show you what that means. You do the 4% and it shows me the number, right? So let's do this. Does anybody have this on their phone? Dawn, you've got it? Okay, cool. Unmute your phone, Dawn. You get to be my wing lady for a minute.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Okay.
crap. Darn it,
All
I
right.
shouldn't raise my hand when I'm talking to her. No,
All right.
this will be good because you and I haven't gone through this before, right?
Nope.
Okay, so you've got your app. So let's plug it. Let's do this on the $200,000 house, okay?
Okay.
Guys, this is like, some of you might be saying, well, come on, man, this is easy, blah, blah, blah. You move on. No, I'm not moving on. Because I know most of you guys aren't explaining it like this. So I'm going to walk you through it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody sees it, and then you can rewatch this later and go. Okay, so let's put in $200,000 house.
Right.
Okay, so you got that?
Yes.
What are they doing as a down payment? Their parents really love them a lot. So they're going to put 10% down. Mom and dad will give them a couple bucks.
Okay.
Okay, so let's put a 10% down.
Okay.
Okay, good. And so let's use 4% as the interest rate. Okay, guys, I've got this pre-populated in here, so I can just kind of walk them through it and show it to them. It's already populated in there, so you don't have to fumble through it in front of them. So if you're getting squirrely going, oh my God, I can't do this in front of a buyer, you don't have to. Have it pre-populated before you even show up. Because if I'm going to go talk for a first-time buyer, first time I'm talking to a buyer, I want to make sure I have this stuff ready to rock and roll, right? Okay, 30 years. So you got 30-year fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you can scroll down a little bit here, right? You can scroll down here, and you can add in money for your homeowner's insurance. So let's say it's $1,400 for their home annual insurance. And
Okay.
then you add in $3,200 for their taxes. Okay, now there's a bunch of other stuff that's in here. But you don't need to go into all that stuff, guys, because we're not mortgage people. We don't want to get into that kind of detail. We just want to make the point, right? So for Eves, this is a great way to make the point, okay? So now, what does it show you the total? So your total should look like that. What is your total for your mortgage payment with the interest?
$1,242.68.
Perfect. That's exactly what I got. Good. Okay. So here's the deal. Have them write this down or plug this into their cell phone. Almost every who has a cell phone on them. And what I'm going to do is say at 4%, or you can just grab a piece of paper, old school, right? And write it down in front of them and write this down. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, so here's the important part. I want you to understand that if an interest rate changes by 1%, which it's probably most likely to do in the next year, it makes a fairly substantial difference. So Dawn, go back in and change this from 4% to 5% interest rate.
$1,349.61.
Okay, so here's where it's really, really super important. This is where you make, if you're just writing this down, you write this down in front of them, and then you make them pick up their phone, you make them pick up their calculator, and you make them do the math. Okay? So Dawn, do you have a calculator close by?
Sure.
Okay? So you got a calculator on your phone? What I want you to do is I want you to put in the number for 5%, which was $1,349.
Mm-hmm.
It's $1,349. And then I want you to take that and subtract $1,242.
$106.93.
106. Okay, so 106 bucks. Okay, so here's the deal, Mr. Buyer. Not only boom, 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 but in interest rates, if interest rate shifts, which we're expecting it to, is way below normal. For a long time, it's been way below normal, so we're expecting it to go up. If that happens, and it only goes up 1%, that's an extra $106 every month that you're paying to live in the exact same house, the exact same toilet, cook on the same phone, use the same exact backyard, open the same exact front door, use the same exact garage, $106 more per month. That's a pretty good number. It's $100 a month to do the exact same thing. So let me ask you this: if you could go to a hotel and the hotel is $200, or you go to the hotel and it's the same exact hotel the next day and it's $300, do you feel good about that? Well, you got ripped off, right? It's the same exact thing. So here's the difference between a real estate agent and a real estate expert consultant. Number one, an expert's going to get into this if it's warranted. If they get it here, stop, right? Eves, we don't want to give them all the info, but if they want the whole story and they're really dragging their butt, and you've got 1, 2, 3 interest rates. We're expecting them to go up. And as a real estate consultant and expert, you understand what that means. So let's do the math on it. Pull out your phone. So let me on your $200,000 house. Here's the difference between 5% and 4%, $106 per month. Now here's where you take it to the next level. This is where most people say, let's make this really make sense to them. Dawn, can you take $106 and times that by 360?
Oh, I did by the 30 years. Sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are 30 years and 12 months each.
Oh wait, 38,160.
38,106.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Buyer, Eves, by waiting 1 year, if the interest rate goes from 4% to 5%, difference of $106 a month, that's $38,000 over the life of the loan. Is $38,000 a lot of money to you? Yeah. So we're talking about saving money for a down payment, and by waiting, not only are you throwing away $18,000 in rent, you're throwing away you threw away last year $14,000. I don't know what's going to happen then next year, but if it just does what it did last year, based on the metrics in the market right now, I'd expect it to continue doing what it's been doing. In the Orlando market particularly, I'd expect it to do just exactly what it did last year. In the Tampa market's at a 2.7 month supply of homes, which means property values are probably still going to go up. In the Detroit market, 3.4 month supply of homes for the last 18 months straight, which means it's going to do exactly what it did last year based on the metrics. So I'd expect it to go up another 14 just based on if it did exactly what it did last year. And then to add into that, 1% interest rate change costs you 38 grand over the life of the loan. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to educate you so you understand. When you start looking at people that have a lot of stuff and a lot of money when they retire, and people that are struggling when they retire and still have to work as a greeter at Walmart when they're 90, these guys didn't do this and leverage this stuff. So let's do the math for you for the total, because this is a real big number. So if you get somebody that's actually interested in this conversation, it's fun, because when you start doing the math for the total, it gets freaky huge, right? Freaky huge. So let's do the math for all of it real quick. You just lost $18K in the last year renting. You lost $14K in the last year because of appreciation. You lost $38,000 if the interest rate goes up by 1%. Wow, right? What's 38 plus 14 plus 8?
57,560.
70,000. 38,000 plus 14 plus 18.
57,560.
Way more than that.
Wait, you said 18,000? 14,000.
Plus 14 plus 38.
Oh yeah, sorry. I missed the number. Whoa. Hold on.
It's $70,000. I got it.
Okay. I'm fired.
Help them out. Let them off the hook. If they're stumbling, fumbling, let them off the hook so they don't feel bad, right? But have them run the math. So let's see, just based on your rent, appreciation, and then interest rates, here's the net that you've basically given away over the last year waiting to buy this house. So let me ask you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, does this make you more motivated to make this happen sooner than later, if at all possible, or less motivated? That's 1 year, right? If you add a second year to it, because you've waited 2 years already, you've got another year's rent. You've got in the Tampa market, that appreciation, in Orlando market, that appreciation. Detroit market was 7%, 22% over the last 3 years. So you add to that another 14, you add to that another 18. Let's say interest rates stay the same, because we'll not get crazy with it. Do you see where this starts to get nuts? 32 and 70. So you got $92,000 over the last 2 years. So let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is $92,000 a lot of money to you? If you had an extra $92,000 in your pocket at the end of 30 years, what would you do with $92,000? That's putting a kid or two through college. That's putting a grandkid or two through college. You know, there's a lot of things you could do with an extra $92,000, doing exactly what you're doing today, which is get up in the morning, go into your bathroom, take a shower, brush your teeth, do your stuff, get dressed, put on your snazzy tie, pull on your vest, iron your clothes, go to work, come back home, cook dinner, raise the kids, pet the dog, right? 92 more grand in your pocket. These are the types of things. You can take any number of these pieces, each individual piece. If you're talking to somebody, you're like, hey, I heard interest rates are doing stuff. Okay, let me show you what that means. Do you see how to use this? So I can go, if they start the conversation with interest rates, let's talk about the interest rates. Let me show you what that means. What that means is boom, boom, boom. Remember, show them what it means over the life of the loan. Because if they're going to stay in that house for 30 years or have a mortgage for 30 years, or 40 or 50, like most of us, that's going to cost them at least 38 grand just on 1% on a $200,000 house. Can you imagine if they're buying a $300,000 or $400,000 house, what that means? Okay, so if they start with interest rate question, answer the interest rate question, let me show you what that means. Boom, I can do this whole thing in like 5 minutes. Okay, great. So you've got a question about interest rates. Can I show you what that means to you? It'll take about 5 minutes. Ask them for permission. If they say yes, show them. Excuse me. If they say yes, show them. Okay? And then if they're saying, so there's one other component you might not have thought about. Have you heard about what's been going on with the appreciation over the last year? And they might go, yeah, you know, it has appreciated a little bit. Great. So in our market, Dale would be saying, in our market, the appreciation was 7% over the last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. So what's happened on a $200,000 house in the last year is that $200,000 house went up $14,000. Or for you, that's like $1,200 a month. That's gone up, which is why it's probably feeling harder and harder every year to buy a house, right? And they start nodding their head and they're like, yeah, totally, right? On top of that, you're renting, right? So you can start with 3, go to 2, and then go to 1. You can start with 2 and add 1 and then go to 3. You figure out where their soft spot is and you poke it, right? And you help them make sense of it. Now, we're not pushing. This is casual. You do this with love, right? We do this with love and gratitude that, number one, we understand this info. And number 2, you're changing the way they're going to see this for the rest of their life. So is this a big deal to show them this? Absolutely, right? So that's how you show it to them end to end. If you want to get nuts and really scare the crap out of them, add it up. And if you want to get really crazy with it, add it up and then show them what happened the last 2 years. Add another year to it. That's what's going on. That's why it's becoming harder and harder and harder. You want to have more money, an extra 100 grand in your savings account when you retire. That's how you do it. That's pretty much it for that part. Okay, good. Any questions about this? Guys, keep in mind, I'm recording this, so I'll send you all a copy of it. I'll have Adrian clean it up, and we'll send you a copy of this so you can watch it, okay? Any questions with regard to this? I explained it ad nauseum, okay? When I'm sitting with a buyer, as a recap, when I'm sitting with a buyer, I can buzz through this stuff in like less than 10 minutes. And they're sitting there like looking like, holy crap, right? They're sitting there hanging onto the seat because they know, I'm like, but wait, it gets worse. And they're hanging onto their seat, choking the heck out of the handles on their seat, right? So do it quick, keep it simple, only give them the info they need. You show them the first part and it freaks them out, stop. Say there's more to this and I can go into more detail if you want me to, or if that's good enough for you to say, yes, let's start moving forward, let's just start moving forward. Again, don't oversell them. If they want more info, show them the appreciation component. If they want more info, show them the interest rates. If they start with an interest rate question, answer the interest rate question. Show them what it means. And then say, by the way, did you know what's going on with the real estate market? What's happened with appreciation in our market? Yes, good, go. Run with those numbers, okay? If they want more info, you're renting, great. And or where you're at now, great. Show them the info. Put it together and make the story and tell the story the way they need to be done, okay? Sound good? All right. So I'm going to end with that for right now. If you guys want to stay on, it's right at 1 o'clock. Okay, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It's right at 1 o'clock. I promised Brandy I would do more info on the for the upside for the seller, and then I would also talk about the move up buyer, and I can use this same information to do that. Okay. So what you've got, so let's start out with upside down seller. So if you guys want to stay on, great. If you need to jump off, I totally get that. I try to stay 1 hour. We're right at the 1 hour mark. So stick around if you want to. I'm going to keep this and I'll record this too. So you can watch the end of this, go to the 1 hour mark, and then watch the rest of this for the upside down seller. Okay. So with regard to the upside down seller, Brandy, upside down seller is pretty much simple. Okay. So let's say, for example, they owe $250,000 on the house and the house is worth $200,000. So they're upside down 50 grand. Okay. You got $50,000 in the negative. So what are their options? Their options are pretty simple. They can stay put, stay in the house. If they stay in the house long enough, it'll appreciate back up to the 250. Chances are in this market, the fact that they're upside down on their house means every time they get equity on their house, they're leveraging the equity out and doing something with that money and pooping it away. Okay? Because really, in the Detroit market, the market's gone up 22% in the last 3 years, and they're upside down on their house. If they bought it 2 weeks ago, that would make sense. If they bought it in the last year or two or three, that makes no sense. Or it would only make sense if they're leveraging that money out and they have a home equity line or something like that, and they're leveraging that money out of the house. Okay, so what we've got to do is say, okay, so you're upside down. So Mr. Seller, based on the math, you owe $250,000 in the house. Based on the market analysis I did and show all the properties that are just like yours in this immediate area, the market is saying, based on your stats and what your house looks like, that your house is worth about $200,000. I showed you the info. I showed you what we're using as comparables. You agree, based on what we're talking about, your house is worth around 200. Yes? Good. Once you get them to agree on that, then you show. So you're basically upside down $50,000. So you have a couple of options. You can stay until your house appreciates to the point where you can get 250 for it, so you can get out even. You can leave the house and let it go into foreclosure, right? Just walk off, leave the keys on the porch, and let it go into foreclosure. Don't recommend that, but you can do that. You can try to short sale the house. You might have heard of short sales. People were doing that in the past. The problem is most people can't get a short sale done anymore because it takes real extenuating circumstances for a bank to agree to short sale the house. In this scenario, your house has been going up. You took the money out, you leveraged it, and did whatever you did with it. So for example, I had a neighbor. She was interesting. I will name her name because she was a pain in the booty. Her name was April. They took out $100,000 in equity. They bought a used Jaguar that was really nice, inexpensive. They went on multiple vacations. They were at Disney like 17 times in a year. And they basically burned through that $100,000 in less than a year. And then when the market tightened up, they got all chapped off and said, well, we're selling the house. I can't believe the bank isn't going to help us out and renegotiate the deal and blah, 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 blah. And then they tried to short sale it. The bank basically said to her, you're not a candidate for a short sale. You took the money out, blew it, had a great time with it, bought all this other crap and blew that money. You're not a short sale scenario. So chances are they're not a short sale scenario. They probably don't want to leave it go into foreclosure. And then the other option is to sell the home and kick in 50 grand, right? So you can either stay and let it appreciate back up and then sell. You can let it go into foreclosure, which is going to make it really hard for you to buy another house, by the way. You can try to short sale it, but I don't think that's going to be a good scenario because banks aren't short selling properties that don't have a really extenuating circumstance at this point in the game. Or you can sell the house and you have to come up with the 50 grand cash difference, and then you can move on to the next place. There are your options. So for those of you that are in the real estate business that have only been in the business for the last 3, 4, 5 years, you got Daniel here. I got Daniel smiling. Daniel, you've only been in the real estate business on this side for like 20 minutes, right? Yeah. So you've never had to have this conversation with grown adults. This is the craziest conversation when you're talking, you're sitting down talking to people that are like 55, 60. Well, shoot, I'm 47 now, so it's not so scary. When I was 32, having this conversation with people that were 58, 60, and 65, and I'm explaining this to them, and they're going, oh my God, we're screwed, right? That was a real conversation we had all through 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, and into 11. We were having this conversation with people one time after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. Here are your options. Pick one, okay? And you'll be surprised how many times people can come up with cash when they really want to do something. So let me show you an interesting scenario here. If you're looking at a move-up buyer, so there's one scenario. Now, if this person, and you guys might have heard me ask Brandy earlier, I think she might have jumped off because she had another meeting, but I asked Brandy earlier if they were a move-up buyer. If she said to me, yes, they're a move-up buyer, here's a cool part, right? We can use this same info I used over here for a move-up buyer. Okay, so if you're a move-up buyer, you're in a $200,000 house, and you need to get a bigger house because you just had another kid, and then mom's going to move in with you. Here's the cool part. If you're thinking about moving up, I would say move up now and buy a house now, and here's the reason why. In Orlando, $200,000 house went up how much? 7% in the last year. How much did the $300,000 house go up? It went up 7%. So your $200,000 house went up $14,000. Your $300,000 house went up $21,000. Right? So when you're looking at the math on this, you just made $7,000 more in 1 year. Over the last 3 years in Detroit, I've just had the math recently done with that. We're at 7% the last 3 years. So you take that times 3 years. By living in the $300,000 house for the last 3 years versus a $200,000 house for the last year, you've got 21 more grand in your pocket. So if you're thinking about buying a more expensive house, do you want the more expensive house to appreciate or the less expensive house to appreciate? So by moving up now, do you have a little bit more expenses? Yes. Do you have a little bit more money going out of the pocket? Yes. But are you also appreciating more? Absolutely. So when you do the math on these two, this could potentially offset, the appreciation can offset the extra expense. You're making more money by moving up now. Does that make sense? And a lot of times they'll go, oh, that's pretty good. So for this guy over here that's upside down, if he was a move up, he could be starting to offset some of that $50,000, be offsetting it faster if the market continues to appreciate. So there you go. So when you're talking to a move up buyer where they're going to be buying a bigger house, good time to move up. So if the market is declining, and some of you are in markets that actually came back a little bit because they were a little bit hot and they've actually rolled back a little bit, here's the fun part. A move down buyer in a market that's declining, you want to move down faster, right? So here's the reason why. On a $300,000 house, if it was going down, if it went down 7% in the last year, you lost 21 grand. In a $200,000 house, if it went down 7%, you only lost 14. So would you rather lose $21,000 or $14,000? So in a market that's declining, the people that are moving down, it's better to do it now than wait. In a market that's going up, if you're going to be buying a bigger house, it's better to do it now than wait. So here's the cool part. There's almost always an advantage, and then we just have to manipulate and maneuver our businesses around to be able to take care of the people that can take advantage of this. You can explain this to people one piece at a time, show them the math, and then they make better decisions, and they're more likely to follow what you're doing, more likely to see you as an expert, more likely to see you as a consultant than a sales guy just trying to get a check. Does that make sense? Good.